He once saw her as a backup, not the one he loved most, just the one who was good enough if his ex didn't come back. But what he didn't see coming was that she would vanish without a word, then return in a way that shattered his entire world, quietly, brilliantly, and leaving no exit for the one who betrayed her. This time she didn't need to be chosen, because she was the one making the choice. What do you think happened after that confession? Trust me, this is one of those stories you won't be able to stop listening to, and every second is absolutely worth it. If he loved someone else from the start, then where does that leave Mira in this picture? Mira isn't the type to fall easily. She loved once, so deeply it blinded her, and she was left behind without a word. The fire that once lit up her heart was cruelly put out by someone she trusted. It took her nearly 3 years to find balance again, not by running from love, but by getting crystal clear about what she truly wanted. Mira is an architect, 28 years old, detail-oriented, reserved, with a sharp eye for design and a strong dislike for anything half-hearted. She met Finn at an interior design exhibition. He wasn't like other men. He didn't try to impress, didn't talk big, didn't show off. He stood silently in front of a blueprint Mira had helped design, studying it like it could speak. The way he tilted his head, the unreadable furrow in his brow, it drew her in. For the first time in years, she walked up and started the conversation. Finn is a real estate investor, 35 years old, successful, articulate, and a great listener. He never asked Mira to talk about her past, but somehow she found herself wanting to share. There was something about Finn that made her let her guard down, like he could see through the mask she wore every day. They started dating. Everything unfolded gently, without pressure. Finn took the lead but never tried to control. He was attentive but never intrusive. He remembered that Mira liked soft lighting, hated loud music, and always sketched with pencils instead of pens. No detail slipped past him. And Mira, the woman who once felt like a burden, was, for the first time, treated like a real choice. After 8 months, on an April evening, Finn proposed. No big scene, no candlelight, just a small box opened at the dinner table, and a question asked in a low, slightly shaky voice. Mira looked at him, not to judge if he meant it, but because she wanted to remember his face in that exact moment. And then she nodded. No hesitation. No weighing the pros and cons. In that moment, Mira believed, completely, that her past was finally closed, and Finn was the beginning she truly deserved. The wedding planning began. Mira used to think she wasn't cut out for wedding dresses or family meetings, but with Finn, everything felt easier. At least at first. She was excited, choosing the venue, trying on dresses, discussing the guest list, rings, the ceremony. Finn was involved. He seemed happy, but he wasn't taking initiative. Sometimes he was genuinely busy. His real estate business was expanding into new areas, and Mira understood, but that understanding slowly wore thin. When she sent him a link to pick out rings, he said, "This one's fine, but let's not rush. We've got time." When she asked about suit colors, he laughed. "Haven't decided yet. Gray or navy, maybe? Anyway, no rush to buy one." One day, when Mira brought up finalizing the guest list with his mom, Finn responded slowly, "My mom thinks next year might be better. Better timing, less bad luck. But if you want to stick with the original plan, I'm in." Mira wasn't superstitious. She wasn't overly sensitive either. But something felt off in those words. It wasn't what Finn said, it was how he said it. He didn't shut things down, but he didn't show up fully either. He stood in the middle, like someone ready to step back if things shifted. When did the conversations start to fade? Mira would text him at night and get a reply the next morning, sometimes just a short, dry response. She was the one reaching out, yet it felt like she was carrying more than her share. One evening, after returning from the studio, Mira sat alone at her drafting table. She stared at the save-the-date card they had designed together. Their names printed bold in the center, simple, elegant, the kind of card she once dreamed of keeping forever. But suddenly it felt hollow. What she once saw as the next chapter of her life now felt like a plan only one of them was really moving toward. Finn still said he loved her. But love that avoids, love that shifts all the decisions onto someone else? A coldness began creeping into Mira's heart, not from the weather, but from the silence of the man she was supposed to marry. She had never asked, "Are you sure about this?" because she believed real love didn't need that question. But now it echoed in her mind every time Finn said, "Let's not rush." People say, never make someone a priority when all you are to them is an option. Mira wasn't sure if she was a priority or just one choice in a long list of if nothing changes options. And maybe that was the problem. He said he loved her, but acted like he was waiting for something to happen. Or someone. She wasn't looking for doubt, but doubt came looking for her. After weeks of drawn-out silence, Mira had learned to accept Finn's change as part of a new normal. Until one Saturday night when he left his phone on the kitchen counter and stepped into the bathroom. Mira wasn't the curious type, but when the screen lit up, she couldn't look away. A name appeared clearly. Avery. The message? Almost back. Wait for me. Just 6 words. Simple, but far from harmless. Mira froze, eyes locked on the screen. Her heart didn't race. It slowed, heavy like lead. She'd never heard that name in any of their conversations. When Finn came out and saw her expression, he paused for a split second. Mira asked calmly, "Message from Avery?" Finn blinked, then quickly grabbed his phone. The message disappeared with a single swipe. "Oh, Avery, an old partner. We worked on a real estate project in San Diego. She's just asking for help now that she's back." It sounded rehearsed, too clean, and the way he avoided her eyes, it didn't feel like the truth. Mira nodded slightly. No follow-up. Okay, just that one word. But inside, an earthquake had already started. She didn't confront him. She didn't get angry. She didn't check his messages or call to interrogate him. Because Mira knew, when someone starts deleting messages instead of replying, the truth is already louder than any excuse. But she didn't walk away. Not yet. She chose to watch, quietly, without leaving a trace. Finn began having urgent meetings at strange hours, nights where he came home late with no clear explanation. One evening, right after dinner, he said something had come up at the office and disappeared until almost midnight. Mira took note of everything, like an architect reviewing a blueprint on the verge of collapse. One afternoon, while attending a construction industry seminar, she ran into Lily, a former colleague who now worked in high-end interior design. In the middle of catching up, Lily casually mentioned Avery as an old acquaintance. "Remember Avery? The one who lived in Barcelona for a while? She just moved back to the city. I think she used to live with a guy named Finn." Mira didn't show a thing. She just smiled, nodded slightly, and swallowed everything that was screaming inside her. Avery. Not a business partner, not a colleague, an ex, someone who had lived with Finn for 5 years. And now, she was back in town. Mira felt the air around her thin out, as if the slightest movement could tear through the fragile layer of trust she'd tried so hard to rebuild. That night, Finn came home late. Mira didn't ask why. She just looked at him, more closely than usual, and she saw something that couldn't be faked. The eyes of someone distracted by something or someone. Finn's voice was still warm. He still asked, "Did you eat yet?" Like he always did. But for the first time, Mira realized caring words don't always come from a caring heart, and patience isn't always proof of love. From that moment on, Mira began piecing together every small crack in their relationship. All the times he said, "I'm not ready to pick the ring." All the times he postponed meeting her mom. "Mom thinks we should wait until next year." Or was it really him who needed more time? Mira understood, sometimes it's not about being unsure of the person you're with. It's about not being done with the one who came before. Finn didn't act like a man walking toward the altar. He acted like someone waiting for someone else to walk back through an old door. And when the name Avery showed up, suddenly every piece snapped into place with chilling precision. An ex returning, the present left hanging, and someone, Mira, forced to question where she really stood in a picture she thought was complete. She didn't feel sad anymore. She saw clearly. They say, if someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And Mira finally did. She didn't blame Finn for having a past. Everyone does, but she couldn't stay with someone who was still waiting to see if that past could come back to life. And more than anything, she refused to be the one waiting while someone else got chosen. Mira began pulling back, quietly. She stopped bringing up the wedding, stopped asking about his schedule, stopped sharing her work plans. Finn might not have noticed, but a part of Mira had already left the moment that name appeared. She didn't know if Avery had really come back to win Finn over. But that no longer mattered. What mattered was, if Avery returned, what would that make Mira? Not every truth has to be shouted to bring someone to their knees. Mira used to hope she was just overthinking. She wanted to believe it was all coincidence, that Finn was just tired, overwhelmed, and Avery was simply part of the past. But Mira no longer dismissed her instincts. The one time she ignored them, she was betrayed, brutally. This time, she needed the truth, not someone's reassurance, just proof. Proof clear enough that her own conscience couldn't deny it. She didn't hire a random investigator off the internet. She knew exactly who she could trust, an old contact, someone who used to vet business partners for a firm she once worked with. Discreet, precise, never asked unnecessary questions. Mira said only one thing: I don't need guesses, I need the truth. 1 week. She didn't press for updates, she didn't lose sleep, she kept working, still called her parents to check in, and stayed quiet every time Finn said he had a late meeting, was talking to investors, or would be home a little late. And then on the 7th day, the photos arrived. No message, no explanation needed. Finn, Avery, together at an Italian restaurant downtown. Another shot, standing close at the gate of a luxury apartment building. And the last one, the one Mira would never forget, captured the moment Finn held the door open for Avery to step inside. The warm lobby lights lit up his face. He was smiling. Not the kind of smile you give an old business partner. It was the kind of smile you only give someone who once held your heart. Mira looked at every photo. She didn't cry. She saw it plainly. What she had feared wasn't just true. It was undeniable, more honest than any confession. That night, Finn came home after a meeting with clients from New York. She was already sitting in the living room, silent, no overhead lights, just a table lamp casting enough glow to show a face that no longer looked soft. Finn stepped in, ready to speak. But she spoke first. I have a few questions. I'd like straight answers. He stopped, didn't take off his coat, didn't ask why. Mira looked him dead in the eye. You're still seeing Avery, aren't you? Finn exhaled, softly. Like someone who had been waiting for this question, he didn't deny it, didn't turn it around. Yes. Do you love her? Mira asked. No shaking, no stumbling. Finn sat down across from her, lowered his head. Avery was my first love. I thought I'd moved on. I really did, but when she came back, everything came rushing back. I couldn't stop it. His words swept through the room like a cold gust of wind. Mira didn't flinch. So what am I, Finn, while you're out here? Rediscovering your feelings? Finn swallowed hard, looked at her like he was searching for the least damaging way to say it. If she hadn't come back, you'd still be the one I'd choose. You're steady, smart, kind. You're someone I believe I could build a life with. Mira let out a quiet laugh. But it wasn't joy. It was the sound of someone who'd finally realized exactly where she stood all along. She repeated his words slowly. If she hadn't come back, you'd still be the one I'd choose. Finn looked down, said nothing more. He thought Mira would scream, cry, throw something, but she didn't. She simply stood up, walked to the closet, and pulled out a medium-sized suitcase. No rush, no panic. She folded each piece of clothing, neatly, deliberately. Finn jumped up. Where are you going? Wait, just let me finish. Mira turned to him, eyes steady, not red, not wet, just a look that had run out of hope. You already finished, Finn. The problem is, you thought that was enough. He stepped forward, tried to take her hand, but Mira gently pulled away. No flinch, no drama. I'm not leaving because I'm hurt. I'm leaving because I'm finally clear. And he stood there, silent. Mira rolled her suitcase to the door. Paused for a second, didn't look back. Someone once said, don't be someone sometimes. I think I was never meant to be the choice, not if someone else was just a step away from coming back. The door closed behind her. No slam, but louder than any goodbye. Now, the room held only Finn. And the answer he thought was harmless, but was enough to lose the one woman who had been willing to stand beside him while the other hadn't even shown up yet. Silence became Mira's clearest farewell. She didn't leave a note, didn't write a letter, didn't ask a friend to speak for her. She just left, quietly, as if she had never been there at all. The suitcase she rolled out of their shared apartment that day was all she took. A few neatly packed outfits, a couple of favorite books, her work laptop, and a folder of unfinished design drafts. Nothing that belonged to Finn, no keepsakes needing an explanation. Mira disappeared from the familiar map, without a trace. She moved to Austin, a new city, a new job, a life that looked nothing like the one before. No one knew, not even close friends or former coworkers. Mira left no trail, no social media updates, no photos, no check-ins. Her disappearance was her way of closing every unclear chapter for good. She took a job as an interior architect at a growing startup, busy, creative, demanding, but exactly the kind of place worth starting over. Mira rented a small apartment, white walls, wooden floors, a window facing the apartment complex's parking lot. Nothing fancy, but clean, quiet, hers. She bought everything in shades of gray and blue, the colors that calmed her mind. Every item in the space was chosen by her. No one else had a say. No one else got a vote. At night, Mira started learning how to cook. Not for sharing, not for posting pictures. She cooked for the feeling of creating something with her own hands, something no one could take away. In the early mornings, she ran around the neighborhood. The first runs were heavy, breathless, but slowly her body adapted, her stamina grew, her heartbeat steadied. And with each step, Mira felt like she was leaving behind not just old memories, but the weight of expectations that were never really hers. Then she signed up for boxing, not to hit back, but to learn how to stay grounded, to hold her balance, and not flinch when something came charging at her. Mira didn't forget Finn, but she no longer clung to his image. The memories of him faded like old paint beneath a fresh new coat. She didn't try to forgive. She didn't seek more answers. She simply moved on. Meanwhile, Finn began to feel the emptiness he hadn't noticed at first. Avery, the woman he once believed he couldn't afford to miss if she came back, turned out to be nothing like the version he had held onto in memory. She was beautiful, radiant, magnetic, but no longer simple. Their conversations grew tense. She questioned him often, picked at the past, asked about Mira. Finn started to realize it wasn't first love he missed. It was the peace Mira once brought into his life. Avery wasn't the villain. She just didn't fit anymore. She wasn't the girl from 5 years ago, and neither was he. They stayed together for a few months, but the fatigue set in quickly. In the end, Avery was the one who walked away. No fight, no goodbye, no glance back. Only then did Finn truly look around and realize there was no one left. He started calling Mira. The number was out of service. He sent messages, no read receipts, emailed her, no reply. Asked around, friends, old coworkers. No one knew where she'd gone. One night, Finn sat alone in the apartment that used to be theirs. He stared at the wall where Mira once hung one of her design drafts, now just empty space. He unlocked his phone and scrolled through old photos. Mira smiling at an exhibit, sitting in the sun with a sketchbook in her hands. Her face unguarded, unarmored. She trusted him. Trusted him so deeply, she never kept an exit plan for herself. And he had chosen to treat her as a backup, instead of the only one. Now as Finn tried to reach for her, there were no traces left. Mira had erased every way back. People often realize who matters most only after they're gone. But sometimes, the cruelest part isn't losing someone. It's losing the right to apologize. When you realize the value of what you had, it's already behind a door you can't knock on again. Finn had lost Mira, not because she was angry, but because she was clear-eyed enough not to come back. There was nothing left to say. By the time he realized who he truly needed, she no longer needed him. He found her, and still, he was lost in her eyes. Finn couldn't explain what drove him to that office. Maybe it was the ghost of a dream, or the endless hollow ache he'd come to recognize by one name, Mira. Whatever it was, it brought him there. A small office building in Austin filled with light and quiet air. Glass doors revealed a world he once couldn't imagine Mira building on her own. But she had. She was standing near the window, discussing a blueprint with a colleague. When their eyes met, Finn suddenly wasn't sure if he should have come at all. She looked different. Same frame, same features, but her gaze was steady, her presence sharp. She wasn't the woman he once delayed marrying, the one he kept as a safe choice. Mira didn't look surprised to see him. She walked over and opened the door, invited him in, calm but not warm. Finn stepped in carefully, like someone afraid to touch a place he no longer belonged. "You found me," he said, voice rough. "I know it's late, but I needed to see you." Mira nodded. "Have a seat." No questions about how he found her. No questions about why. No blame. Finn glanced around the office, clean, modern, unmistakably hers. Everything had a sense of order, precision, and presence. On her desk was a framed photo, Mira and a group of people signing a deal with a major real estate firm. The smile on her face was real, bright, effortless, with no one beside her needing to make it shine. "You're doing well," Finn said, almost as a whisper. "I am," Mira replied. "Very well." He took a breath, eyes locked on hers. "I want to start over. I was wrong. So wrong. I never should have made you feel like a backup. I lost you because I hesitated, because I didn't know what I had." Mira didn't flinch. She walked over to her desk, picked up the photo, and handed it to him. "Do you recognize the man next to me?" Finn glanced at it and froze. Robert Doyle, a longtime rival in the industry. A man Finn had openly criticized, arrogant, ruthless, but undeniably influential in real estate. "He's the CEO of Doyle Group," Mira said. "We just wrapped a major expansion project on the east side of the city." Finn looked up, met Mira's eyes. Something caught in his throat. She gently set the photo back on the desk. "I don't need to lean on anyone to move forward, especially not someone who once saw me as a backup plan." Her words weren't sharp, but they were final, like a verdict delivered with calm clarity. No drama, no explanation needed. And Finn knew any attempt to defend himself would only make him look smaller. He lowered his head, hands clasped together. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to say to stop someone from leaving, because she had already left long ago, and he was only now beginning to understand what it meant to lose. Mira wasn't cold, but she didn't pity him either. She had simply grown too much to forgive just because he'd finally learned to regret. Finn stood up. "I understand. I needed to hear it from you, that this is really over." Mira nodded, eyes steady. "It's been over for a long time, Finn, but thank you for coming to make it real." She walked him to the door. No smile, no handshake, no polite, "Take care." Finn turned back once, as if hoping she might stop him, even just with a look. But Mira only watched, calm and unshaken. The way someone might look at a familiar face wandering down a street that no longer bears the same name. The office door closed behind him, soundless, yet final. This time he walked away, and she didn't need to see him off. Mira never returned to Chicago. She never stepped foot in the old apartment, never came back for whatever was left, never met with mutual friends. She refused to stand again in streets that had once witnessed promises meant to last. For Mira, leaving had nothing to do with distance. It was about refusing to let anything pull her back. She didn't retell the story, didn't sit with friends to unpack the lesson, didn't post a long reflection online about moving on or growing through pain. Mira kept it all to herself, not out of fear, but because she no longer needed anyone else to understand what changed her. She knew that was enough. Instead, she chose the most powerful kind of silence, living well. Mira launched a small design workshop, not for design students, but for women who'd been left behind, who'd been divorced, who once believed they weren't strong enough to begin again. Each course was intimate, 10 to 12 women at a time, held in a bright, airy studio Mira had designed and decorated herself. In that space, they didn't just learn how to match colors, draft layouts, or design a room. They learned how to rebuild their lives. With their hands, their eyes, their intuition. Mira didn't talk much about the past, but every gesture, every quiet piece of guidance carried an unspoken message. You don't have to wait for someone to give you worth. You can create it yourself. One day, at a professional conference in Austin, Mira was invited to speak. The room was packed. She stood on stage, soft lights catching the sharp but steady lines of her face. After her talk on career growth, someone from the audience raised a hand. "How do you get over someone who saw you as a backup?" The room went still. Mira smiled, without hesitation. "You don't need to get over them," she said. "You just need to rise above who you were yesterday." The answer was short, unpolished, but it made the entire room go silent, not because it was poetic, but because it was real. Hundreds of miles away, in a different city, Finn sat alone in the old apartment. The space had changed, new furniture, rearranged layout, but the emptiness felt louder than ever. He had found the live stream by chance. Mira's name had appeared in a design industry article, and curiosity had led him here. As she spoke those words, he didn't frown, didn't scoff, didn't defend himself. He just sat still, eyes fixed on the screen. And for the first time in his life, Finn truly understood. Sometimes, one moment of hesitation is all it takes to lose something you'll never be able to replace. He once believed Mira would always be there, steady enough, quiet enough, good enough, so that if everything else fell apart, he could return to her. But that belief was exactly what cost him everything. Because someone who truly knows their worth will never settle for being anyone's backup plan. Mira didn't know Finn was watching, and she wouldn't have cared. She didn't live to prove anyone wrong. She lived to remind herself that her value was never up for debate. Not once, since the day she left, did Mira look back. Not out of fear, but because there was nothing left to see. The old wounds had healed. No scars, because she didn't dig them open every day. She used her pain like soil, quietly, patiently, and one day, from that ground, something stronger grew. People asked her, "Did you forgive him?" Mira only answered, "Forgiveness wasn't for him to deserve. It was for me to be free." She let go, not with bitterness, but by living a life so full it no longer needed validation from anyone. And that was enough. Mira moved on without resentment, because she understood. A strong woman doesn't wait to be chosen. She chooses herself. Some people enter our lives not to stay, but to teach us never to stay with those who didn't choose us from the start. Mira's story wasn't a dramatic breakup. It didn't end with revenge or regret served cold. It was the quiet, steady rise of a woman once seen as a backup, who stepped forward, redesigned her life with her own hands, and never looked back for anyone's permission. And maybe the most important lesson was never about how wrong Finn was, but about how right Mira was for refusing to stay trapped in someone else's uncertainty. Because love, if it isn't clear, shouldn't continue. And anyone who sees you as an option doesn't deserve to be your destination. What about you? Have you ever been someone's plan B? And if you have, what did you do to rise from it? Share your story or your thoughts in the comments below. We're here to listen, to understand, and to stand with you. And if this story stirred something inside you, don't forget to subscribe to Love Stories and keep walking with us through the many roads love can take. Thank you for staying with us until the very end.